Hello, everyone. My name is Zoe Martinet, and this is an interview with Mr. Joseph
Writing
Lewis.
a book, how do you get your ideas?
They just come, honestly. I think one of the tools that a writer needs to develop is to notice things, and to be open to what it is you're noticing. For instance, I think I told the story about how my caught in a web came together. It was reading the newspaper. In one article, they're talking about fentanyl overdoses and how they are becoming countrywide. And then a page or two later, was an article on MS-13 and how they're growing in our area. It was two unrelated stories that came together in my head about gangs controlling the drug industry and what would happen if. And that's kind of how I start my stories, is what happens if. And my what happens if was, if we have a group of students and one or two adults deciding that they want to get into the drug industry, and they are taking money from a very violent, vicious gang, we're going to have a problem. And that's the essence, really, of Caught in a Web.
Do you base your ideas off of personal experiences, or
Sometimes.
do you make it up?
For instance, the Lives trilogy and prequel, Taking Lives, this one, Taking Lives, Stolen Lives, Shattered Lives, and Splintered Lives. That's all based upon my work with the Wetterling Foundation and working with families who have had stranger abducted kids or sexually exploited kids. A lot of that came from my counseling background, because I was kind of the go-to person, and I don't know why. I didn't have any extra training, but whoever had an abuse case generally shipped them to me to work with. So so I would say those four books in particular were based upon my experiences with the Wetterling Foundation, helping kids stay safe, trying to get kids back, things like that.
What advice would you give to aspiring writers?
To notice, to be aware, and to be open. To read like crazy, because if you don't read, you're not going to have the tools to write. You have to read a lot in your given genre, but you also have to read outside the genre, because they're going to give you ideas about sentence structure, paragraph structure, pacing a story. My style is kind of like James Patterson. I had one reviewer actually write that if you like James Patterson, you'll love Joe Lewis, which is kind of scary thought. It's kind of a humbling thought, but it's also a heck of a compliment, in that my style tends to mimic his, and that my chapters are shorter, and they always end on an uptick, so you have to keep moving forward in those chapters. And so I say you read a lot, and then you just have to keep writing and develop a thick skin, because the more you write, the better you're going to be. The more you exercise your imagination and creativity, the bigger it's going to get, the stronger it's going to get. And the thick skin comes in because not everything you write is going to be loved by everybody, and you have to be able to accept that.
Do you want each book to stand on its own, or are you trying to build a body of work with connections between each book?
Ooh, that's a real good one. The natural connection in my stories are the characters that I carry forward. I guess I'm looking more like as a body of work. And my theme, if you were to look at all of the 6 books, they deal with a kid faced with a problem, and they have to kind of solve it and deal with it. And yeah, there's going to be some adults in the background that'll kind of guide and point them forward, and to help in some cases. But it really comes down to the kids and how they deal with it, and how they work with it and how they solve the problem that they're in.
What is a good way to understand the context of the book from the reader's viewpoint and trying to understand what the author is trying to get across?
Can you read that one more time?
What is a good way to understand the context of the book from the reader's viewpoint and what the author is trying to imply?
Well, every reader, there's a relationship between the writer and the reader. And the magical thing about that is the fact that every reader is going to take away something a little bit different from the book. And while I have an idea, for instance, in Spiral Into Darkness, I'm dealing with nature versus nurture, and is a serial killer born or are they made? What is the trigger that causes someone to become a serial killer? Dealing with family. Yes, you biologically you can have children. You can also adopt. Is one better or is one lesser than the other? Is sexuality, is that something that is innate, born, or is that something that is a trigger one day that you decide? So those are things that I was playing with in Spiral. And what I found is that in some of the reviews, they are really grasping the fact that this is a really fun crime thriller, and there's a lot of meat there. There are others that can't get past the sexuality that's in the book. They throw up their hands and say, terrible book or whatever. They're not going further, or that's only the surface. They're not going deeper. And that is because everybody brings to a book their own perspective, their own background, their own experience, and their own personality. And there is no one way. There is no one right way or wrong way for a reader to read a book. All a writer can do is put my imagination and my character and stuff in the book, something that interests me, and hopefully that's going to interest a reader out there. But I can't say that you're going to like it as much as this person, because you're two different people, and what you bring to the book that when you're reading it is going to be different from that person because of what he or she's going to bring to the book.
Mm-hmm. How did publishing your first book change your process of writing?
Change my process of writing?
Mm-hmm.
It really hadn't. It has not changed my process. It caused me to think. And there's a writer, there's a singer-songwriter that you may or may not know, a guy by the name of Peter Frampton. He was big in the 70s, 80s, early 80s. And then he really tailspinned out. I mean, he just became not anymore. And what he was able to pinpoint, or what critics had pinpointed, is the fact that he wrote solely to sell songs, to sell albums. He wanted to find what was selling at the time, and he wanted to mimic those. And what happened is he was losing the personality of a song. He lost, I guess for lack of a better word, credibility, in that he lost the art. He was only for the marketing and the sales. And so that, do I want to sell books? Absolutely. Do I want to make a pile of money? Absolutely. Would I love to be famous? I don't know about that. I kind of like being kind of sort of somewhat anonymous. But at the same time, I'm not going to write a book just because I know people are going to want to buy it. Because it's not going to be me. And so I'm really proud of Stolen Lives. I'm proud of all of them, but I'm proud of Stolen in particular because it was my first. I'm proud of Caught in a Web because I took the characters in a different direction, and I'm really proud of Spiral because I'm exploring a little bit more psychology, background, behavior than perhaps some of the other books.
How many hours do you write a day?
1 to 2 hours a day. Last night I cleaned up actually 2 chapters, cleaned them up, added a little bit, took away a little bit, and then I wrote a completely brand new chapter. So I usually go 1 to 2 hours a night, approximately.
And lastly, what is one thing you would like everyone to realize when reading your books? What message do you want them to take in?
I don't know if there's a message that I want a reader to take away. I want them to realize that it's a heck of a lot of work. I mean, what you're seeing between the covers and it's a pretty cover, and it's what I think sometimes a reader doesn't realize is that the words I chose to string together have a purpose. There's a meaning there. The fact that I put George coming from Arizona with a Navajo background, and he has this mystic spiritual side of him that he has visions, and his dead grandparent, his grandfather, speaks to him and sometimes visits him, because the Navajo have this belief that they're attuned to the spirit world, and sometimes your dreams are messages from the spirit world. That's their view. And so what I would like the reader to understand, it's a lot of research, it's a lot of time, and every word has a purpose. Otherwise, it would not have been written. Each sentence was a thing unto itself, and each paragraph are those things strung together. And I think readers don't understand that, or the difficulty in it, because each of those books underwent revision and editing and all of that. It's just a pile of work. It's about a year's worth of life that I put into each of those books.
Thank you for your time.
You betcha.
Thank you so much for listening.